Koto, welcome to South Pacific Muscle, episode 51. It's just the boys here tonight. We're going to mix it up a little bit.
I feel fucking terrified already. Giving away my power. I'm like
the control freak over there.
Fucking control freak, and I'm nervous as shit because I'm usually asking the questions. This is horrid. I'm in the hot seat.
So when we started South Pacific Muscle, we both had a chat. It's not about us, right? It's about the athletes. It's about the shows. It's about, getting local people on. But we're just going to mix it up a little bit because I reckon that Nate is the most well-connected man in New Zealand bodybuilding and strength sports. So we're going to just get him on the hot seat. And I thought it'd be pretty cool just to find out a little bit about where he's come from and his experiences because, we've been mates for 25 years or so. We did our first show together in 97. But along the way, man, just some of the people that he's met and the stories he's got to tell, hopefully it'll be interesting for you guys. So without further ado, we'll get into the questions, eh? So, stay lean or dirty bulk? Just kidding.
Honestly, I've got a view though. I've got a view and I've got to share it. I think that dirty bulks are absolutely essential when you start off as a bodybuilder, but as you start putting on muscle and things start slowing down, it's more about refining and putting on quality muscle rather than weight for weight's sake. So my view is early days, dirty bulk, fuck the world. But really in the stage that I'm at, that you're at, people that have been in the game for a while, I think clean bulk's definitely the way to go. So let's get that horrible question. Do we ever have to ask that again?
Oh, no, I got told my quick fire questions are a bit boring, so I need to find some new ones. Right, we'll move on. So tell us a little, you grew up in the Bay, tell us a little bit about your early years, schooling, growing up, sports, that sort of thing.
Cool. I grew up in Hawke's Bay. Those that know me know I'm pretty fucking staunch about where I'm from. Grew up in Flaxmere, so some people consider it, a pretty rough part of the world. Sure, there's a bit of that, but fuck it, it is a melting pot of talent, man. There's some talented sports people, musicians, artists, you name it, man. There's some real talent there. And from a bodybuilding perspective, huge Māori and Pacific Island population. And man, there's some talent there. And I see these boys come into the gym all the time. So I'm from Flaxmere, grew up there until, into my very late teens. I moved sort of into Hastings and did my schooling through in Hawke's Bay. I
reckon that's got a lot to do with how you interact with people, because you seem to know everybody. You get on with everybody. Well, most people anyway. You're pretty charismatic. You're like just a really gregarious kind of person, and so that growing up with such a range of different people and such a diverse kind of environment you grew up in probably led you to interact with different people.
Definitely. I think, that's something that's helped me not only with my sport and the contacts that I've made, but, from a work perspective, I've always prided myself on being able to create a rapport with a range of people. Like I'm quite comfortable sitting in with a group of CEOs. At the same time, I'm happy to be with the boys on the floor doing the work. So, I've always had a respect for people, and regardless of their background, what they do for a job, those type of things. And I just respect good people.
I don't think you can fake that either. If you've got respect for people, often they warm to you no matter where they're at, and that's got to be genuine. And I think it is coming from you. So that's probably why you interact so well.
Yeah, you kind of get what you see with me. I can put on a game face and be polite when I don't feel like it. But generally, you get what you see with me, and if I don't like you, you'll fucking know pretty quickly.
So far, so good. Yep, 25 years down.
Yeah, for sure, bro. I went to school in Hawke's Bay. Played a bit of team sport. Probably giving away a bit here. I was a pretty troubled young fella. Very, very good academically. Not a great team person, I've got to say. Kicked off my first team at about 11. Starting a fight on the sideline with my own teammates. And I sort of played rugby, but like a lot of people that have drawn to individual sports, I probably got frustrated with those around me, not because I was a great talent, but because I had such a competitive streak and I got fucked off when people pissed around. I think, towards the sort of end of sixth form, I kind of started pulling away from rugby. I didn't make the first 15 when I trialled. I got sent off in my first game for the seconds, and kind of went, fuck these guys. I really enjoy weights. And I started weights at the age of 12. So I bought my first 4 kilo plastic coated weighted dumbbells. And it's a real strong memory for me. I used to try and hold them out like a lateral raise, and every single kid in the street could beat me. And I was gutted. So I started training properly from 12 years old. At 15, I had my first gym membership, and I was really lucky. I got sort of, mentored. A guy took me under his wing, taught me how to train, and at the time he'd been to the junior worlds and the senior worlds for powerlifting. So I learned, squat, bench, and deadlift inside out, and I just really loved it. I loved the camaraderie I got in the gym, and from then on, kind of like the gym sort of became my life. I was heavily influenced by, like Arnold Schwarzenegger, like everyone in my age group, so I just loved that look. And funnily enough, it wasn't chest or arms. The one body part that I really wanted was a big set of calves. I still haven't. I just took to training. So I started off, I guess, essentially lifting, and at 15 sort of became a somewhat of a power lifter, and competed in my first powerlifting comp when I was 16, and I stuck at powerlifting probably in...
Well, man, what were your lifts? What were your numbers? Tell us what your numbers were at 16.
My first comp, I squatted 140. I benched 75, and I deadlifted, I think, 140 as well.
It's not bad for 16, body weight, right?
Yeah, I think I had a body weight of about 70 odd kilos. I just remember when I left school, I was trying to get to around 70 kilos. So I sort of left school pretty skinny kid, but reasonably strong. I wasn't overly gifted at those sports. I just had a real hard ass attitude. And I think that probably came from, my early sports that I really enjoyed, and still to this day. People would never guess this one. They say, what's your favorite sport? And everyone thinks bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever it might be. But my favorite sport, skateboarding. So I grew up skateboarding, and when you skate, you hit the ground fucking hard, and you've got to get up and you've got to keep going. And to progress, you've just got to really have a sort of a hard attitude. And I was never a fantastic skater or surfer, but I just fucking love those two sports. And I think some of the kind of lessons I learned from those sort of transferred into my attitude. So I was a hard grafter, and I think that despite my genetic limitations, I think the hard work kind of eventually did pay off, and I stuck with the powerlifting as a natty, and I never hit anything massive. I think my best squat ended up at about 285, bench 180 something, and deadlifting probably around 260, 270, somewhere around there. So, not bad. It was always as under 100, but I was never going to be a fantastic powerlifter. And then I got the bug for bodybuilding.
So through that time of your powerlifting, that was at university, or?
Yeah, I kind of carried on with it until I was about 20-ish, 21. And then
So
I discovered
hang on a second. You were doing those lifts at 2021. You were squatting 280, you were deadlifting 270.
Somewhere around that age. But I lived it. That's all I did. And there were people around me that were going well over 300 on the squat. There were guys.
You can always find someone who's stronger, right? But that's not bad. That's tidy,
I was happy with what I did. When I walked away from powerlifting, sure, I could have stuck it out, and I could have, probably got myself to a 750 total, but I was never going to the worlds, so and to be fair, I'd got the bug for bodybuilding, and I sort of headed down that pathway when I was at university. We had a few boys from the Gold Coast over there, and fair to say they were pretty special, man. They were benching 220 and they were bodybuilders. They were squatting 300. They had legs like tree trunks, and I was just sort of really, I guess I wanted to be like that. So while I picked away and finished a degree in zoology of all things, with a fair bit of physiology and biochemistry, and later on some anatomy at Otago, and a bit more biochem, I focused on being a bodybuilder. And I remember actually towards the end of the first year, and I was still a natty, and one of the boys said to me, he goes, "Fuck, look at your chest." And I never even considered that I had a chest. And I thought, I'm actually making progress here, and I think that's where I decided to stop drinking, because I was still doing what most guys do at varsity, getting out on the piss, and as usual, I was kind of the enforcer for the boys. So all the boys would get on the piss, and then trouble would go down, and they'd point to me. And I was a really scrappy kind of kid, and I kind of worked out that during the time from being early teens to my early 20s, I had well over 100 fights, and I thought, fuck, I don't want to be that guy anymore, and I kind of realized I was a bit of a bully, and so I made a decision. I went, I'm going to go into bodybuilding. I'm going to stop drinking. I'm going to throw everything at bodybuilding, and I'm going to become a better human and just not be a fuckwit anymore. So it kind of changed my life. I made a sort of a real.
Yeah, it's not necessarily bodybuilding that changed. You made a choice to change your life. You were reflective enough to go, actually, this isn't who I want to be. And you had the sort of willpower to kind of make that change. And bodybuilding, I guess, might have been the vehicle that you did it, but it took the sort of reflection and discipline from yourself to kind of be that new person.
Yeah, and look, and when I made the step eventually to become an enhanced athlete, I actually looked at some of the guys around me and thought, a lot of these guys that get on become really cocky and arrogant, and they become kind of more of a bully or more of a fuckwit. And I thought, if I do make the step, before I do it, I'm going to commit to being better behaved, I think, for lack of a better description, and make a real commitment to doing it, because it wasn't something I took lightly. For me to become a bodybuilder and do the things that I needed to do to try and be a competitive bodybuilder, I kind of weighed that decision up, and I'd been training. I think I had a training history of 9, nearly 10 years. So I'd been training for a long time, even though I was still fairly young. But I knew where I wanted to go, and I got into it. And then shortly after, you and I managed to get on stage
at the Power. We're training at the Power Dome down in Dunedin, South Islands, 1997. Damn you, Mike Debenham.
Yes. No, that was a real special time in my life, actually. You kind of reflect on times in your life where you kind of go, they were the good old days. Well, that was one period in my life that I really go, that was the good old days, because Power Dome had such a fantastic atmosphere, and just the guys that were training, the average guy in there was just busting his gut and leaving nothing behind. And, for Phil and Rod, when they ran that gym, they created a magical atmosphere. And I think it was probably our version of Temple Gym,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
The unfortunate thing is there's no money in bodybuilding. There's no money in bodybuilding gyms. So they sort of had to make that a bit more commercial and move up to Moray Place, and then they've moved on and opened a 24-hour gym now that's very, very mainstream. They've still got the same leg equipment there, and that old Polaris stuff is outstanding. I went back for a workout, and my knees loved it, but I don't train there regularly.
I went for a walk through there probably a few months ago when I was in Dunedin, and I saw the 61 kilo dumbbells, and I saw some of the pieces of kit, and I went, they've still got all the good stuff here. So, the heart of the equipment's all still there, and I'd love to go back for a train there. So next time I'm down.
To give people a bit of a frame of reference of how committed and how anal these guys were, Rod was an accountant, and so he got where they had 60 20 kg plates, and he knew that each one was was cast slightly differently, and they weren't all exactly 20 kgs. So he took them and he weighed every one of them, put them in order, and numbered them from 1 to 60. So you knew if you had number 60 and number 59, they were almost identical. If you had number 1 and number 60, they might be a kilo different. So, and he made sure that they sat on the weights trees in order. So yeah, they kept that place pretty tidy.
Oh, no, it was cool. It was cool. It was, I guess, that you talk about leveling up, and I've been training pretty hard, but I've been training at varsity and training in Hawke's Bay, and I got down there, and just the atmosphere made me step my game up. And I think during that year, I think I probably put on 5 or 6 kilos in the first year I was there, and I remember standing on the scales upstairs and hitting 100 kilos for the first time, and I was just stoked. I drank about 3 liters of water, but yeah, so that was that. And then I did the first show, and I had seen, I don't know, a couple of dozen, not a dozen, probably half a dozen, 8 shows up north. And I was convinced that I was going to go in and wipe the floor on my novice debut, and I came 6th out of 11th in the novice, 70 to 80, and that was a real big wake-up call for me. The standard in the South Island at that time was phenomenal, and I don't know, people talk about being dedicated and that, but that time I locked in for 3 years before my next show. Or just under 3 years, and I didn't miss a single workout, and I probably missed a handful of meals, but other than that, I was just absolutely focused. And I made the decision during that time that I needed a job that suited the and I think like some people kind of laugh at that, but I guess I love the sport so much that I had to shape a career that suited me being a bodybuilder. So I decided to do teaching. And if you remember, I was going to come to Teachers College in Otago, but the places had all filled up. So I ended up going in Christchurch with my mate Ruben, and trained with him, and trained with Matt Ashworth, Mike Debenham, Dave Smith, and all those boys, and lifted my game again. And and then I came on stage, and I think the South Islands, I was 74. A couple of years later, I think I was 92 at the South Islands when I went back there. So did a bit better that time, managed a second, and then managed a second at the Nationals that year. So that was my bodybuilding. And then it was time to have kids. So I went back to being natty. I did the natty thing for 6-7 years. Got back in, I played rugby for a season. Lost a lot of size, then started training as a powerlifter again, natty, and did similar sort of lifts, some good lifts. I think it was actually at that point that I might have got those bigger totals actually. So it was really hard going back to being a natty after being an enhanced lifter.
Were you still teaching then when you were having your family, or was it, when did you get into HR?
Yeah, so
I don't want to jump ahead.
No. I was teaching then, and I started thinking about other careers, and I decided I wanted to get into industry. And it wasn't HR. HR was something that I sort of fell into. I actually got a role as a technical compliance manager, not a manager, technical compliance cadet, and the role got restructured before I left my teaching job. But they said, hey, there's a training role, so I kind of got into that, and then did some more qualifications. So at the moment, I'm sitting with a degree and 2 postgraduate qualifications, bit of sports management in there. I managed to convince a company to pay for that one, so that was nice. And actually thinking about studying again this year, so never too old. But then
you had some pictures too. Are we skipped past too many pictures? Are we
I'll show you
at the end?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Those at the end.
Yeah.
I know you have some from your first show, and there's when you mentioned time for family, I know you've got some of the kids on there, but are we going to flip backwards and forwards, or do you want to show those pictures?
I'll show those in a minute, because from there I decided I kind of started liking strongman when I was powerlifting, and I realized very quickly that strongman was a different game to powerlifting, and I got very heavily involved with strongman, and I ran the Hawke's Bay Strongest Man, and I did some comps there, and ran in strongman and achieved the target I set out to achieve when I first had a crack at it in 2000. It took me 9 years, but I managed to win the under 105, so the lightweight New Zealand Strongest Man title. So that was.
What did Jackson say about Jackson?
No one cares. No one cares.
Sorry, man. I don't want to take it away.
No, it was cool. I really enjoyed my time there. Very much like with powerlifting, the people were just fucking cool. And then I decided I wanted to get back into bodybuilding. So I went back into bodybuilding. But maybe I'll pull up some photos, and then I can show you a little bit of the journey. So, yeah, I'll put this one up first because this shows me back in, I think it might have been first year varsity. And another one that was probably, within the last month or so. And for me, kind of showed just like, I always loved it. And my attitude hasn't changed, I'm still the same person, still train as hard as I ever did. And, it's probably... Sorry, Mike.
Sorry, the photo on the left there, if that's first year varsity, then you're 19, 20. So you've already been at powerlifting for 6 or so years. You're already doing some pretty big lifts, So for the I mean, no disrespect, for the size of your muscle, you're actually very, very strong. So rather than, like you get bodybuilders who are big but aren't very strong. For you weren't very big there, but you're pretty strong. Stronger than you look.
I think a lot of it is technical as well with lifting. You have to be technically good, but I kind of dispute it too. Like, I think people talk about bodybuilders being big but not strong. They are strong, but there's relatively strong. When you start moving into the powerlifting and strongman worlds, strong is a very relative term, and I'll show you why a little bit later. So my strongman, after the powerlifting, and I got into strongman. This is actually my second. I competed in 2000, and then I did the powerlifting as a natty again, and I went back to strongman. And my favourite competitions were probably New Zealand Strongest Man, because Matt Rossiter just ran such a good show. Rest in peace, my brother. Yeah, but I just loved it. I loved lifting rocks, and I loved the fucking archaicness of the whole thing. Towing trucks, it was just, you're lifting things that weren't made to be lifted. And for the average person, picking up a 160 kilo anvil, they wouldn't even think about it. But we picked it up, and we would walk as far as we could walk with that, or for whatever time. And the photo on the left, which was called, I think it was called the Hercules hold, but it was more of a suitcase hold. I actually held the New Zealand record for all weight classes for 4 years before they changed the weight, so that record no longer existed. But I was really proud of that, because you can see I was enjoying myself. I remember looking at my mates that had just been, and my mate Sam was about 210 kilos, and he'd just gone. He was fucking huge, and he'd done it. And my mate Nick, who had national deadlift records, he'd been, and I held it, and I was watching the time, and I looked at them, and I smiled. And I went, how much longer do you want me to hold it for, boys? Like this. And it was just one of those moments that I'll always remember. So I was really proud of myself there. And that was.
Do you remember the weights you were holding in the time?
I think they were about 125 kilos each, maybe somewhere around there. Time was about a minute, I think. And this is kind of why I talked about strength being relative. The picture on the left, I think, was 360 partial deadlift, and I worked up on that day. I worked up to 375, and so at the time I was probably, in the top couple of percent of strong people in New Zealand. And then I went over and competed in Australia, did Sydney's Strongest Man and the Ultimate Strongman Challenge, and you can see me standing next to Zydrunas Savickas, Big Z. Yeah, and that's why I say strength is relative, because, I was one of the strongest people in the country, yet this guy could lift in some events twice the weight that I could lift. And I look at him, and I just, just the amazement, like when you look how big the guy's frame is, his head's nearly twice the size of mine. And, you meet these guys and just for sort of reference, I'm sitting at about 110 kilos in that photo and I look like a little boy, just absolutely amazing. And watching them eat breakfast is even better. And then we got back to bodybuilding. So a couple of early photos, bodybuilding.
That's after post strongman, 2009.
Yep.
You're around about then. You
I think 211 might have been my last year. So I got back into competing at about 212, and then 213. I did a couple of shows. So I think one of these was the one out west, the show that Club Physical ran. The other one may have been an very early NABA WF show. And I actually really liked that photo. I kind of think it, although I was quite small in that photo, I just really like the shape and the classicness of that sort of look.
Love those trunks too, man. Super Nate.
It was gold. I had a routine where I turned around at a certain point and the crowd just kind of went ape shit. So I thought no one had ever done that before, and I thought, fuck it, man, I'm going to do something different. I always like to have my own little twist on things. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, it was cool. But I had some really cool times. This is again a very early one, 213, and I'm posing with Grant Patrice here, who, as you know, is an IFBB pro. And it's really funny, because like at the time I thought, fuck, I've got him. I can beat this guy. And looking back now, with the experience, you go, it's like structurally, he's just so much more gifted. And in some photos, he blitzes me. There's a couple of shots I think I win, but
your condition's definitely better there from the back. Your hamstrings are better.
From the back I was, but in some of the other shots, we were pretty close, and he had a lot more muscle and structurally very, very pleasing physique, very gifted guy, very young. He did really well. Yeah, he had a great physique actually. I've got a couple of pictures with some, and this is kind of to show from my perspective, I was really happy with that 213 photo with Steve Orton. I thought, I knew I was coming up against Steve Orton, and he won the NABA Worlds that year. And luckily you can't see front on the legs because that boy's got an Olympia set of legs, man.
Yeah.
But like most people say, I felt like I should have been there, and I didn't look out of place. Probably the one time I did feel out of place was at the Pro-Am, and you can see here picture on the right, this guy Muhammad Mahal, I think his name is, from Saudi Arabia, and he came over and he had the biggest set of legs that I'd ever seen up close in person. And it was a real eye-opener to see, that the international standard. So he obviously won his pro card and went on to compete as a pro, but just to see the level. And this was the early wave of lifters from coming out of Kuwait and the Emirates and that. So it was a really neat experience, and Mo put on a great show, and that was one of my fond memories. And I think I nailed my condition for that one too, which was really nice. Did a few photo shoots along the way with Linda, and I actually really used to like photo shoots because they're pretty taxing, but they're a lot of fun. And got some great shots that I remember, and it's always good to kind of look back, and I look back at that and I think how old am I in those photos? Anyway, late 30s. But I still look at those now and think, fuck, I can beat that, and so my aim is obviously still to progress. And I guess, people go, how do you do all that shit? And, how have you managed to fucking compete for however many years and achieve those things? And for me, it's about my reason why. And there she is. So my daughter, Caprice, she's like a mini me. She's exactly like me, speaks her mind. You can see her giving the fingers. My boy, Zave, is an absolute gem. And he trains harder than anyone I know. So
we should get him on the pod sometime. Some of the stories you've told me about his training, it's nuts.
Oh, look, he's ruthless. Like he, like to catch up with him, I'll say, can I catch up with you on the weekend? And he'll say, maybe I can do Sunday, but I've got to be back by 2:00 because I've got to go for a run. And any social event that's on, if it crosses his training, not a shit show of seeing him. He's very dedicated. He wants to be a UFC fighter. He's actually got a neat little build on him, and he'd make a shitload better bodybuilder than I ever will. That photo, I think, there was, early. He was mid 15 years old, I think, in that photo. So probably had better arms there than I did at about 20. So
That
but
level of focus and discipline sounds pretty familiar, though, doesn't it? So you might have learned by copying someone.
Yeah, look, as a parent, you always want to spend time with your kids, and when you can't, like you get a bit slighted, but I fully support it, and not only do I, not only do I understand it, I support it because I know what his goal is, I know what he wants to achieve, and I find it very motivating. And it's scary, I went, I've never seen that level of focus, and then I thought, hang on. he did, and so he learned a lot of that from me. He also learned a lot of that from his stepfather, who is a very, very accomplished strongman and powerlifter. And so he's had those sort of people around him. His mother's obviously a clinical dietitian and was a New Zealand sports dietitian. So he's had some really good people around him. He just bought his first, he sent me a photo the other day, he just bought his first tub of creatine. It was like a proud dad moment. So, but for me, the whole reason I do the sport, is because of the people, and I've been fucking blessed, man. Like I've met Cedric McMillan on the left. He spent 10 to 15 minutes with me when there was a queue about 100 meters long to see him, just shooting the shit. And, Jose Raymond, I've met a number of times. He recognized me in a casino and waved out from the other side of the casino, and we had a yarn there. Akeem Williams, fuck, it was great to meet him. Holy shit, is he big. But, like all these people, like the pros say, they're just so down to earth and so human. And for me, I love the discipline of bodybuilding and competing and all that, but I just love the people aspect. Dallas McCarver, rest in peace. Tom Platts, blessed enough to meet Tom Platts, very, very nice guy. Darren, obviously, the O'Malley boys. Fucking love catching up with Josh. Josh, anyone that has met Josh Lenardowitz knows that the guy is just a top guy. Marcus Rule, who, if you grew up in our era, everyone knew Marcus Rule, and it was cool to meet him, really friendly. Conversation was a bit disjointed because of the language, but really likable guys. And this one, I think, like I met Branch Warren, Rich Gaspari, all those kind of people, and it's really cool meeting those people. But even more so, I kind of I thrive on my crew and my sort of people. So, my old training partners, yourself included, Ruben, Matt Ashworth, like Dave Smith and co. But up here, this was just a bunch of us that trained in the gym. So there's Kader, there's Tom there, a very young Tom. So and my old flatmate Lance. So we had a pretty cool crew, and it was just cool because we all lived the same sort of lifestyle, and we all had the same goals, and it was just it was a neat time. Right.
So the transformation. So I was gonna get to this, but look, you just posted this recently on social media, and I thought so. It's probably pretty timely. A few people, I imagine, will be pretty blown away. Now, going back a little bit, the 215 Pro-Am, you'd qualified for the Arnolds. You tore both patella tendons right off the bone. You had to have surgery. You thought bodybuilding career is over. You fell into a pretty dark place after that. Now, we're not going to go into that. If you listen to the pod 25 with Ryan Gallo, we alluded to that a little bit. But suffice to say, sort of 4 or 5 years in the doldrums, and then you decided to kind of make a change again. Yeah. You're reflective enough and disciplined enough to go, right, enough's enough. I'm back. And so tell us what happened from there.
For sure. So I think, if I go back to tearing my quads, I think in retrospect, it was a pretty tough time. I went from being, qualifying for the Arnolds, and I was ready to go off and crack the Arnolds and all the rest of it. And I was a sober driver, and I slipped down some stairs, tore both quad tendons clean off the patellas, and knew I was up for surgery. Look, I've seen that injury. Anyone who knows anything about that injury knows what type of people get it. But looking back in retrospect, I think I needed that. I needed to come down to earth. I kind of fell into a bit of a trap with people, you know, blowing sugar up my ass and telling me I was fucking this and that and all the rest of it. And I kind of got a bit of that old arrogance back, and I wasn't a great person, you know, like I was good to my friends, but I wasn't the best Nate I could have been. And look, I tore my quads off. It was really tough going through that, you know, like I couldn't even wipe my own ass. I couldn't move. I was in splints for 3 months. It was a pretty tough time, but I was very focused for that first year on rehab. Surgeon said to me after a year, you can start bodyweight squats. And I laughed at him and said, I'm already repping 200. So, you know, I progressed pretty quickly and I was very focused. After that period of a year, I'd kind of done my rehab, but I knew I was never going to be a bodybuilder again, or at least in my head, I thought I would never be a bodybuilder again. And I went through some pretty shit times, and you know, like people, you know, kind of think about those times and you know, dwell on them. I guess the way I look at it is I learned some fucking good lessons in that time, and you know, they've made me a much better person. So, you know, for what it's worth, it was pretty tough at the time, but you know, it's good to get back. So
one of the themes that we've seen with a lot of people we've had on the pod is overcoming adversity. So I guess that's your moment of adversity, that you sort of rise from the ashes, the phoenix rises again, and you kind of you learn a lot of lessons and come back a better person. So
yeah. And look, I kind of had a lot of people saying, why don't you get back into bodybuilding? Why don't you compete again? And my answer was always the same. It said, my platform's not good enough. And I learned this from Dave Smith. He said to me, if you're going to, you know, compete, you need to have a real solid foundation to launch off, because competing and dieting is fucking hard. So over the course of probably 12 months prior to this, I started getting all my ducks in a row. You know, I sort of my, you know, like housing, finances, relationships, you know, and made my life very simple. And I got to a point that I knew it was close and I was just about ready to go. I kind of got into a habit. It wasn't, you know, it was just social really. And I started having a few beers every night. And then I went snowboarding with my boy and realized I couldn't even tie my fucking laces or reach my snowboard bindings. And I thought, fuck, actually, if I don't do something, you know, fuck, if I had a heart attack, it wouldn't surprise me or probably anyone else. So on that, in the photo on the left, the 12th of July, that was just before I started training, literally the day after that I started training again. So I hadn't trained. I was 120 kilos at 5'9". And this is probably the shocking thing. My waist in that photo is 46 inches. So it was pretty dire. You know, blood pressure was really high. My breathing was terrible. My fitness was horrific. When I got back into training, I couldn't actually do cardio at first for anything, you know, more than 20 minutes. My feet hurt too much, that type of thing. So I kind of went, it's time. Everything in my life is sort of sorted. And the one thing I know is how to get in shape. So, you know, in 28 weeks, you can see me standing on the beach. And that photo there is probably one of the last photos where I was actually really depleted. A couple of days after that, my coach has said to me, load up. So I'm about 2 or 3 days in on having carbs, and I've filled up quite a bit since then. I think I was about 94 in that photo. I'm probably 96 and a half now and slowly creeping up. So I imagine I'll roll over 100 in the next couple of weeks, depending on how we go. So we had a plan. I went to my coach. I said, look, I need to get in shape. Plan was recomp. So the photos you can see there is my recomp. So I went from being massively overweight, obese, I suppose, to being a very, very depleted and small bodybuilder. And so that was phase one done. So I'm now
you got really strong. I remember talking to you on the way through that. Yeah. Your weight was going up and up. Your body weight was dropping, but your strength was going up and up day by day, just through that recomp process.
Yeah, look, I put on some good muscle, but the one thing that was frustrating me, and I was playing with my head a little bit, was that I had some real glaring weaknesses. So my triceps, my quads were down, and no matter how hard I trained them, being in a calorie deficit for 28 and a half weeks, I didn't pull those weak points back. But I guess I've always had the attitude, you know, the off season is where you bring your weak points up. So our stage now is we're bulking for 6 months, and the aim is to bring those weak body parts up and grow in general before phase 2 is over, and obviously phase 3 is we're gonna get peeled to the fucking eyeballs. Yeah.
Okay, so I know personally, you've got some aspirations now. Are they, as Dave Neaty would say, smart goals yet? Specific, measurable, achievable, timely, or are you prepared to share them with us?
Yeah, 100%. Look, I always convinced myself that I was, not able to achieve what ultimately I would have liked to achieve in bodybuilding, and I always made excuses, genetic weaknesses, whatever it might have been. But I've always wanted a pro card, and look, I have no illusions that I would be a competitive pro. But for me, I would love to win a Mr. New Zealand title. I would love to get a pro card, spend a year prepping for it, and stand on a pro stage for one season. And look, if I never make the top 15, I don't care. I've managed to achieve what I want to achieve. So my goal is really to win Mr. New Zealand. It's a fucking big goal, and I feel a little bit self-conscious saying that, because we've got some fantastic bodybuilders at the moment, and the likes of Ryan, Paris, Anthony, and the list goes on. And these guys have been training hard for years. These guys haven't had the breaks that I've had. They're a lot younger than me. But look, that's where I'm aiming to go. And absolutely no disrespect to those guys. Like, for me to beat them, I will have to be a good 10% better than I've ever been in my life, which is a big ask when you're, in your late 40s. But look, I kind of figured that if you don't back yourself, you're never going to get there. So I'm good. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to have a crack at it. And look, if I don't get there, I don't even want to say that I don't get there, because I'm like, I'm going to fucking get there. But look, that's my aim, I guess. So to try and achieve the things I never thought possible.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Lofty. So we're at. I've known Nate for like 25 years, pretty well, and even, like, I've learned a few things tonight, things I didn't know that he's done, and some of those pictures, the people he's seen. We could probably talk all night. He could tell stories about competitions going to the Olympia, and some ones that we probably wouldn't be able to put on here. But we're going to kind of come to a bit of a wrap now. If you want to follow Nate, Nate_Wills on Instagram. And as we always do, it's your opportunity, Nathan. The floor is yours to thank anybody you want to thank, or shout out anybody you want to shout out.
Yeah, look, there's way too many people for me. I guess, those people that were there when I wasn't Flash, fuck, everyone wants to ride in the limo, but fuck, when you're taking the bus, who's coming with the bus ticket? So those people that were there with me, massive. But more so, I guess, I don't want to come from a personal perspective. I want to thank those people that are supporting our sports, our athletes. So the powerlifters, the strongmen, the bodybuilders, those athletes, those people that are running the shows, all the federations, bodybuilding, powerlifting, and the strongman, the guys running the comps, people behind the scenes who often don't get thanked. So, without those people, we wouldn't have what we had. And more so, I want a big shout out to all those people that have supported us, because, doing this, people say, oh, it's really good that you're doing it. But I'm as much doing this for me as I am for people out there, because it brings me a lot of joy. So I just want to thank you guys for watching us and supporting us. And hopefully we can take you on a bit of a journey over the next year or so. So thanks.
So how do we normally finish? Stay safe out there, everybody. Is that what we do?
Got to do that, though.
Oh, sorry.
Awesome, guys.
Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Cheers.